So, Ginger.
Yeah?
You know how we wanted to start a podcast, but we were having trouble coming up with a topic?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my pitch. The topic of the podcast is us trying to come up with the topic for the podcast.
What, like we pitch each other podcast ideas and that's the podcast?
Yeah, exactly. We could call it, What Should Our Podcast Be About?
Miles, that's really stupid. Let's do it.
What should this song be about? I'm trying to figure it out. What should this song be about? Could you perhaps help me out? I've had a moment of doubt. What should this song be about? Welcome to What Should Our Podcast Be About? A podcast where we try to figure out what this podcast should be about. I'm Miles Grover.
And I'm Ginger Barham.
Okay, so this week we are abandoning ChatGPT.
Yes.
No longer, that was the end of our ChatGPT series.
Yeah. And I think it was not an unmitigated disaster, but only 75% disaster.
Only 3/4 disaster. It definitely wasn't the kind of disaster that Toilet Talk was.
No, it didn't involve any, public embarrassment. So that's always a plus.
Yeah, I mean, unless you count the, the movie trades where they laughed at our pitch for the werewolf wedding planner.
Right. I forgot we did try to pitch.
We pitched it around Hollywood. Nobody wanted to do it, or probably somebody did, but they didn't want to pay us. And probably in like a little while, some movies like that are going to come out.
Yeah,
that happens with like Deep Impact and Armageddon at the same time and stuff.
Yeah.
Some people heard that and are just going to take it and make their version.
We'll see it come out in a couple of years.
Yeah, probably.
In retrospect, we maybe shouldn't have planned a trip across the country on the basis of this one pitch.
That's true, but we did. We didn't end up having time to see anything.
Yeah.
Other than a couple of offices, so yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't our best laid plan.
Yeah. We did try to get our baby in for a audition for a live action version of Boss Baby. But the lines were pretty long.
Yeah, fingers crossed you might get that one. Should we do the podcast that we do?
Yeah, should we
saying the dumb stuff
should we stop lying now?
No, definitely not that. Definitely not that part. But do you want to start? Get an idea?
Yeah, okay. I have a few ideas this week.
Cool.
I'm gonna save my best one for last.
Sure.
All right, so the first idea I had is as usual, very stupid. It has a title. It's called I Want a New Drug.
Okay.
Like the Huey Lewis song.
Like the Huey Lewis song.
And it is a podcast where we come up with things that we wish there was a medication for. Like always losing your keys, for instance. Or, I don't know. That's the first idea that popped into my head.
I mean, I think that medication is called Adderall.
It doesn't work for me.
Yeah, it's true.
I still lose my keys. Very specific ailments.
Right.
Or, a medication that helps you come up with podcast ideas.
Okay. Or like somebody said something mean online. I could pop a pill. It gives me the perfect comeback and totally own that.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Okay. That's sort of good.
Yeah.
The thing I think of immediately when anyone mentions that Huey Lewis song is the Weird Al version, which is I Want a New Duck. Is that anything? Could we have a podcast about what we want, getting a new duck?
How we want getting a new duck to improve our lives. How about a podcast where we try to convince people that they need to get a duck?
Is it legal to have a duck it must be, because you can have them on farms.
Yeah. No, I mean, I actually went to a pet store one time where they had a duck for sale when I was with my ex, and we thought that it would be very funny to just buy the duck and put it in his son's room and not tell him. And then he just walks in and there's a duck in there. But, you have to be like really committed to the bit to buy a duck and then return it just for that one.
Yeah,
joke.
That would be arguably some kind of animal cruelty, maybe.
Well, no. I mean, I don't mean just leave the duck in there for days on end or anything. He would come over at specific times to stay with us. Sure. So the idea was when he... Yes, the duck. The idea was that Sorry, now I'm thinking about like a rent-a-duck service, and if that's anything.
Rent-a-duck service.
A rent-a-duck service would work for this specific scenario that I'm talking about.
I mean, rent-a-duck service has to be a real thing in Hollywood or whatever.
Right.
How else are they doing those Affleck commercials and stuff?
Right. That's true.
Unless they really taught a duck how to say Affleck.
But yeah, so the idea was that he would be coming over and we would have the duck in his room.
Yeah. No, I was thinking more in terms of like anthropomorphizing the duck who is like so excited to be adopted, and then
you're anthropomorphizing the duck if you think he's excited to be adopted.
That's literally what I just said. I was anthropomorphizing the duck, imagining he's excited to get adopted and then gets taken to a new home, and it turns out it's just a prank. And he gets returned. That would be devastating.
Yeah, so I'm messing with the duck's emotions.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Toying with the duck.
Toying with the duck.
At best.
Yeah. I mean, arguably it would be a little bit stressful for a duck to like be put into a new environment and then like taken back to the pet store. So, I mean, there's a multitude of reasons why this was just a funny idea on paper and not something seriously
you thought it was funny, but you decided not to do it because it would have complications.
Right.
That's the kind of commitment to a bit that I think is detrimental, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I want a new duck. Maybe we just get a new duck. And our podcast is about the adventures of having a new duck.
Yeah.
We would have to have a duck, obviously.
So you're saying in addition to our 4.5-month-old baby and our 3 cats, in our small Brooklyn apartment, we should also have a duck.
I think our apartment is relatively big for a Brooklyn apartment, but
it's still a small Brooklyn
point
apartment.
Still taken. Also, the cats in general probably wouldn't do super well with the duck. The duck wouldn't do super well, probably.
Right. Yeah, no, the duck would not be having a good time.
Yeah. Well, that's drama for the podcast.
Right.
Speaking of animal cruelty for the podcast.
We're going to get a lot of comments from people, I think.
That would be bad to do and make people mad.
I'm not sure, but I'm relatively confident that there's something in our lease that would prohibit us from adopting a duck.
I don't know if it's like the basketball thing where there's no rule that dogs can't play basketball.
Well, no, there's a pet clause though that says other than the pets specifically mentioned, if not specifically mentioned, pets are prohibited.
Okay.
And there's nothing in the lease that says you can have a duck.
Okay, so you're saying we would have to wait until we buy a house to start this podcast.
You're getting exactly what you're picking up exactly what I'm throwing down.
Okay, well, so maybe that's not the idea. I want a new drug one. Could be something.
Funny.
Maybe. Could be fun.
What do you got?
There's one that I'm kind of excited about that I don't know if you'll like.
Okay.
It's a podcast where we are wizards and we explain how magic stuff works. It's like a science podcast, like an educational science podcast, except it's made up, obviously, because it's about magic and we're wizards.
Okay.
So we'd have to come up with wizard names. Maybe
like the coming up with wizard names part.
Maybe have like, wizard voices. My name is Flardabast the Wizard, and today I'm here to talk to you about chronomancy. Or whatever.
Do we have to talk in a wizard voice?
You can pick what your wizard voice is, I guess.
I mean, I would probably have like a high, squeaky wizard voice.
Okay, and what wizard name would that go with?
Flandor the Unshakable!
Flandor the Unshakable, that's pretty good. So this could be something, right? And we could talk about like, developments in magical theory or like, crazy new spell that so-and-so came up with last week, and can you believe how they're bending the laws of magic? And I don't know, it feels like it could be fun.
Yeah, so we're just making up just a world. So it's again a very kind of like Night Vale type of thing where we're making up. We're going with the conceit that this world exists and people just accept that this world exists.
Yeah, it would definitely be like we're in character, we're pretending that this is the world that we're in, but we just are like we're in a world where wizards exist and have a podcast.
Okay.
Right? And we're a couple of preeminent wizards in our, schools of magic, evocation or abjuration, transmutation, whatever kind of, we would have to figure out basically make characters
Okay.
right? We could make characters like even with a D&D sheet or something.
All right.
And like
all right.
be the preeminent wizard. We could even have fake wizard guests on that one of us would do a voice for or whatever.
Yeah, we could talk about like, drama in the wizarding world. Is this basically just though kind of like this is basically just we're cosplaying as wizards, the podcast. It's almost kind of a Harry Potter cosplay type of thing.
I don't think it needs to be particularly Harry Potter, other than the fact that obviously Harry Potter has wizards in it. We would want to be
Maybe it was just the fact that I said wizarding world that made me
Yeah,
think
I think
like,
wizarding world is kind of specific to Harry Potter. We wouldn't call it that, probably.
Yeah.
I think we would need to be agnostic of what the world is specifically.
Yeah.
Like, so you can, whatever you prefer, if you're a big Harry Potter fan, or you're a D&D player, or you love World of Warcraft, or
if you're a big Harry Potter fan, stop being a big Harry Potter fan.
Yeah. But leaving that aside, whatever people want to project onto it as their like preferred wizard world or wizard, like magic world with magic and wizards in it, we would probably not do too much to like be specific to some. We certainly wouldn't be specific to any IP like Harry Potter or
especially Harry Potter.
Especially Harry Potter because fuck J.K. Rowling. But we could even have trans wizards on. Probably we could be specific to trans wizard Harriet Porber, the Chuck Tingle novel.
Okay,
that's pretty great.
That could be kind of fun. That is a book that you absolutely should read if you haven't. It has no business being as good as it is.
Yeah, Chuck Tingle is a treasure. I didn't really get into his podcast too much, but that book was very fun.
It's got sentient motorcycles, so
that's true, and sexy dinosaurs. We could have like discussions on the difference between a wizard, a warlock, a sorcerer, a mage. Talk about different classifications of stuff. We could have episodes about like crazy magical creatures, like how to care for your griffin, or how to get rid of an infestation.
Yeah, I do feel like this is something that you are going to be better at than I am.
I probably have read more fantasy novels than you have, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's...
and the dorky, like, fake science part of it, I think, is going to appeal more to you than to me.
Okay.
Just knowing, like...
Yeah.
How you like to analyze the science of things and how they work. I don't dislike it, but I don't have the nerdy passion for it that you do.
Yeah. I guess I was also thinking we could, like... listen to an episode of some science-y podcast and like basically do the same thing but change it out with dumb magic-y stuff.
Oh, that could be fun.
Like we could do stuff like that, like base it on things like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so that's that idea. Wizard podcast. I don't know what we would call it per se. We'd have to, if we decide to talk more about that, we'll have to figure out the name of it. But
okay. I have another idea that I'm pretty excited about.
Let's hear your other idea.
Okay. And this is probably on the other end of one that I'm going to be more excited about than you are.
Okay.
But I don't have a title for this one, but the podcast idea is...
sorry if you hear Rory jumping around over there. He is, of course, here as usual in his little squeaky, jumpy thing.
He's getting more and more mobile, so...
Yes.
He's jumping around a lot more today. Okay, so the podcast idea is a podcast where we take rom-coms,
okay,
and figure out how to turn them into horror movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me more about that.
I guess I kind of thought about it because I had so much fun when we came up with the werewolf wedding planner.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought was, wouldn't that be fun to take like other rom-coms and figure out how we could change them to make them into horror movies. Let's see. What's a rom-com I know? How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Okay.
What if we took that and instead of like doing all these cutesy things to get rid of the guy, like texting him all the time or just trying to be like a nightmare girlfriend, what if instead she's like
literally a nightmare?
And she's like, she tries all that stuff, and so then she starts like coming up with darker and darker ways to like drive this guy away until she starts murdering people or something along those lines. Or or maybe she's trying to make him think that she's a serial killer to drive him away, but then she like actually starts killing people. She gets so invested in this persona that she's
very committed to the bit.
She's very committed to the bit.
So what are you thinking in terms of like it's not too hard to take any regular thing and turn it to a horror thing by adding murder and spooky stuff, right? So what are you thinking in terms of, because it could be 10 ways to kill a guy or something, right? So what is kind of the format of the podcast? Like how would that work?
Well, I was thinking of the same kind of format as the Werewolf Wedding Planner, where we're discussing how the plot of the movie is going to go.
Okay, so we're making horror movies, but our prompt, instead of a silly thing from ChatGPT, is a random rom-com or whatever.
Right. So the downside to this is that we would have to watch rom-coms probably so that we could know what plot we're tweaking.
Right. And we would have to maintain watching horror movies too, so we don't forget how they work.
Well,
given all the rom-coms we're going to watch.
That's not a problem for me.
Well, I'm just saying, the time in our day is limited.
I mean, I feel like we've watched enough horror movies.
Yeah.
For that to not be a problem. At least I have. I will watch any and every horror movie. But I also was thinking we also could do the flip. We could take a horror movie and try to turn it into a rom-com. Okay. That might be kind of fun too.
Yeah. So we could do rom-com to horror or horror to rom-com. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that could be fun. I mean, I'm not sure that it would really be fun a bunch of times. You know what I mean? Like every week.
Yeah.
A new one. It might get kind of stale.
Yeah. I mean, it is a little exhausting, basically writing a movie.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously we didn't really write the movie like last time. We just kind of came up with some various characters and beats and stuff.
Right.
And actually writing a movie is a lot more work than that. But I guess another possibility along these lines is, what if we just did a genre switching thing in general, right? Like make a rom-com into a horror, we make a horror into an action movie, we make an action movie into a
just give it a bit more freedom.
Yeah, we just take a movie and then completely change, we find the most opposite genre for that movie or something, maybe.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
That could be something.
Yeah, I like that.
We could call it genre swapping or something like that. Genre and gender actually the same root. If you think about it, gender is just what genre of person are you?
Okay.
Anyway.
Oh, I didn't know that, but it makes sense.
Yeah, it's still used that, gender is still used that way in linguistics a lot of times. We think of French having gendered nouns, right? You have la or le, or Spanish or whatever. And those are masculine, feminine, or neuter. But a lot of languages have way other genders. They still call them genders, but there's if I'm recalling correctly, I think there's a Australian language, an Aboriginal language in Australia, where there's a gender for plants, and it includes airplanes, as I recall.
It includes airplanes.
Yeah, because it included it's the plant one, but it came to include vehicles because canoes are made out of a tree, and so a tree was the gender for the tree part, and it carried over to canoes, and then that carried over to cars and airplanes and everything.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, and wouldn't the world be boring if there were only two genres?
Exactly. Yes. And what gender of airplane are you? Okay, that's an idea. Let's see what else I got. So one I've been thinking about...
and I do have one more dumb one.
Okay.
I said I was going to save my best one for last, but I do have another dumb one that I could bring to the table.
All right. Well, do you want to bring up your dumb one?
Yeah. My other dumb one was it's just a name that tune thing.
Okay.
Where we just it's just us humming songs to each other and trying to guess them.
Okay. Do we know?
I was just trying to think of what's a really bad podcast idea.
Yeah. Okay.
That's something.
So you're just okay. What's this song? Or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm oh, is that?
Yeah. We just try to stump each other.
Yeah, okay. That's a pretty dumb idea. But could be kind of fun, I guess.
I think it would be fun for us. Probably not for the audience.
Right, yeah. Probably one of those ones, that's funnier to say than to do. Mm-hmm. Funnier said than done.
Funnier said than
as
done.
the saying goes.
Which is basically this podcast.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I guess my other idea I'm going to talk about right now is, we like to listen to Wonderful, the podcast that Griffin McElroy and Rachel McElroy make together, where they basically just talk about something they like, something that they're into, whatever. Yeah. And so I was thinking, what if we did that, but it's just like something we found interesting this week? Not necessarily like or don't like, but just some interesting thing. So
some like interesting thing that we don't know much about that we decided to like delve into?
Yeah, just like something interesting happened or something interesting we found out about. Like, oh my God, I just found out about, vampire squids from hell this week or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I was thinking, what could it be called? And obviously their podcast is called Wonderful, which is already kind of generic, but not too generic.
Like mildly interesting or something?
Yeah, our podcast could not just be called Interesting or Kind of Interesting or something. And I was thinking...
there is a Twitter account I follow called Mildly Interesting.
Yeah, there's a subreddit for that as well. So I was thinking, well, what if we... my daughter Svetlana, who, people who've listened to previous episodes will know from whatever episode that was that she was in, that she has a kind of a catchphrase that she likes to say, which is, "What is this bamboozlery?" I think she might have even said it in that episode.
Okay. And
that could be a pretty good title.
That could be a good title.
But in that case, I think it would have to be more than just like something mildly interesting. It would have to be something like weird or crazy or confusing that we found out about.
Yeah.
Or heard about or happened or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think that we are going to find something every week, or are we just going to have to be Googling a lot?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to probably go a little bit out of our way and maybe stockpile things that we've known about before, but that we thought were interesting that, it probably need to be stuff that in general a lot of people don't necessarily know about.
Like the gender genre thing.
Yeah, sure. Stuff like that.
Okay.
I don't know, just random weird stuff or interesting stuff.
So maybe not the funniest podcast, but maybe an interesting podcast.
Well, quite literally, that's the concept, that it would be an interesting podcast. Yes. And What Is This Bamboozlery is a pretty fun title. I think we would also still try to make it funny, right? We would still at least be lighthearted and make jokes and stuff. But the premise itself isn't, a joke.
I do feel like this idea is not as dumb as our usual ones. Like, I mean, are we talking about making an actually good podcast? Because,
well, I mean, we're making it, so that's we'll leave that up to the listener to decide if we could make an actually good podcast. But I think, I don't know. I'm just thinking of like what would be fun to make or talk about. I would say if we really hit on a great idea on this podcast, maybe we do end up making that podcast. Also, we haven't said this before, I don't think, but it's something we talked about in the beginning, which is if anybody listens to this podcast and decides they want to make one of the podcasts we come up with, like, go for it.
Yeah,
that would be sweet. We're probably not going to really
Please do it and share it with us.
Yeah, we'll absolutely talk about it on this show if you do. And we know about it. Yeah. we won't automatically know somehow if you do, I guess. Yeah. But do it. Feel free to do that.
And tell us about it.
But yeah, so I don't know. The biggest downside, I think, to that idea is that it is kind of a decent idea for a podcast and maybe wouldn't be that funny to talk about on this podcast.
Right. That's that's
funny,
what I was
dumb
thinking.
ideas for podcasts, but.
All right, so should we go through the ideas that we have this week and
I have plenty more ideas we could talk about if we don't like any of these, or we could always go back to our Bean podcast. But let's. So what did we have? We had, what was your first idea? I want a new drug.
I want a new drug.
We had I
want a new duck.
A new duck. We had the wizard thing, where we're wizard magical explanation podcast.
We've got Name That Tune. And we've got movie podcast where we change the genre of a movie.
It seemed like that was the one you were more excited about. Am I right there?
Yeah, I mean, I was also excited about the I Want a New Drug one. I think that one would be more fun to talk about, especially since we did a movie last week.
True, yeah. Because I was going to say, like, what would, for the movie one, like, what would make us decide like what movie to pick, what genre to change it to.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult to talk about this week because we would have to figure out what movie we wanted to do and what genre we wanted to change it to. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to be a fun listening experience, but maybe we put a pin in that one for a later time.
I do like the name genre swap.
Genre swap, that's pretty good.
Or like genre non-conforming.
Genre non-conforming is really good. Like okay, well, I'm going to note that down, and maybe we come back to this one at a later time. I think it would be fun. I think it'd be fun to talk more about I Want a New Drug.
You don't like the wizard idea, or you don't want to talk more about the wizard idea? Flondo? What was your Flondor the...
Flondor the Unshakable!
I was thinking Flondor the Inescapable, and I was like, that's probably not it.
I like that one. I like that one too. I think we have a lot of fun ideas to talk about this week.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk more about the new drug one. Because I like the idea, but I'm a little bit worried that it may not quite have legs for a full podcast, you know?
Yeah.
Because some of the ideas that we have in general end up kind of suffering from being a little bit too open-ended. And I feel like this could be that, maybe. Okay. Because, like,
that's the point of this, right? That's the point of this exercise.
Of talking about it?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's the point, is eventually we're going to come up with a winner and make that podcast, right?
Yeah, I guess. I guess so.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so I Want a New Drug. So a couple ideas we talked about so far are someone said something mean to me online, and so I take a pill that gives me the perfect comeback to totally roast and own them.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, what are some other problems that plague us daily?
Like a pill that when you say, like, if the waiter says enjoy your food and you say you too, either you take it and immediately forget, or ideally you give it to the waiter and they immediately forget, or both, really.
So drugs that you have to give to people. Waiters will have no problem just taking drugs. Some waiters probably will have no problem taking random drugs
this one would have to be, so this could be part of the podcast.
People are waiting on.
What's the delivery method? Is it a pill? Maybe it's a spray. In this case,
okay.
The waiter like leans down and is like, "Did you enjoy it?" And you just right in their face. Completely.
Before you say it.
No, after you've said it.
Okay.
You said it. They come back, and you're like, "Oh my god!" And you spray them in the face. Then you spray your own face, and both of you forgot about it. To be clear, completely an unethical thing to do. But you know,
we're not concerned with ethics on this podcast.
Yeah, not this particular one, at least.
In this particular instance. So kind of an eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, the spray.
Yeah, a spray for that, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. What else? Could we I could use a medication that just makes me ignore messes so they don't drive me crazy. Okay. Yeah.
Or, I mean, wouldn't it be better to take a pill that makes it so you just are happy to clean up the mess?
Oh, okay. Yeah, a pill that makes you happy to do cleaning.
While we're dreaming.
Yeah.
I mean, it would also be great to have a pill that would be a pill or other mechanism that would make our baby go to sleep for the exact right amount of time, and it would have no side effects, and he would be so happy.
Yeah.
And he would be well rested and happy instead of grumpy a lot of the time because he needs to go take a nap.
Yeah. Are you saying you think he needs a nap right now?
Well, he's starting to get a little
cranky. So maybe a problem I'm seeing with this one is coming up with the ideas.
Yeah.
It could be fun to do like listener submissions.
Yeah.
Where people give us things that they wish there was a medication for. I don't see this one having a lot of legs or being something we could do for a really long time.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest problem with this is that all it really is at the core is just complaining about something.
Yeah.
Right? But in sort of a weird way, right?
But in a fun kind of format. But I mean, there's something fun to that. Like enjoy your food, you too. I mean, that's relatable.
Yeah. But
not wanting to clean is relatable.
Yeah. But I feel like the problem, you end up with this problem of like, well, if you take this to the logical conclusion, why don't you just say, like, I wish I could take a pill where we had world peace and everyone had gay space luxury communism and everything was perfect, right?
Yeah.
Like, it kind of ends up in that sort of situation. Like, I wish I could take a pill that would get rid of capitalism or whatever, right?
Right.
Like,
right. Well,
or that would make me independently wealthy or whatever, right?
yeah, I was thinking more of like for minor complaints.
Minor complaints.
Yeah.
But like, I guess what I'm saying is like, when we're talking about things that, even though they're relatively minor, still would be impossible to take a pill for. So you kind of get to a place of like, well, if you can do this impossible thing with a pill, why not this impossible thing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess it's more a vehicle for like talking about your embarrassments and your gripes and
like a bad thing that happened today.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do see what you're saying, because like eventually, is there a pill that we could use to get rid of incels?
Right. To cure incels of their incel-dom.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, also, okay. I get what you're saying. It could quickly become more serious than funny. Yeah.
I guess we could maybe like help that if we really wanted to try this podcast, if we limited it, like in like if you ever go to like couples therapy or something, they're like, limit what you're saying to I statements. Right?
Okay.
So if it was like, I could take a pill to do this thing, and I'm not an incel, so I can't take a pill to cure my incel-dom.
Thank you for not being an incel.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
I mean,
well. Right. So we wouldn't.
I don't think that community is particularly open to me.
No. I'm thanking you for having sex with me.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, you're welcome.
Yes. Anyway, like, you limit it to I statements, right? So I take this drug to fix my problems. And see, we only talk about our problems or listener problems, or if we have guests, their problems, right? We would have to not try to solve the world's problems.
Right.
Even though a lot of personal problems are, caused by systemic world things in the world that are systemic.
The world's probably not responsible for me losing my keys.
Yeah, you're right. It's not really the world's fault that you lost your keys or that you said you too to the waiter. Or,
in my case, I've had that happen at the airport when they're like, have a good flight.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you too. And it's to like the person at the counter who's not going anywhere.
Yeah. I've actually been on the other side of that because I used to work at a movie theater, and I would, people would get their popcorn and I would say, here you go, enjoy your movie. And they'd say, you too. And then walk off like, oh my God, what did I just say? And I can tell you from my point of view, I don't remember any of those people's faces, anything about them. Like, right. They might remember that time in an embarrassing way or whatever, the embarrassment of that time. I don't remember it. I don't remember them. I remember that it happened, and I thought it was kind of funny at the time, but
that's the thing with stuff that like makes you do the inner cringing, though, is that it doesn't really matter if logically that somebody's not going to remember. That doesn't really help in the moment.
Yeah.
If something embarrassing and that makes you cringe is happening, it doesn't matter if you're never going to see those people again. It's still hard to like go through in the moment.
How about a pill where when you take it, it does help to know that they won't remember and you're not as embarrassed? Yeah. That way you don't have to spray the waiter with your, knockout gas.
Yeah, okay. So just a pill that just makes you not have any fucks to give.
Problem with that is then there are some good things that people don't do because of shame, probably. Right. So you won't want that to go too far.
Right. It would have to be temporary. It'd have to be like...
It's very targeted.
For the situation. Because you don't want to not have a healthy sense of shame.
Yeah, or like guilt or remorse or whatever.
Right.
Things. Honestly, I don't know that I want to keep talking about this idea.
Okay.
I kind of want to go back to the idea about beans.
All right. We want to go back to the beans. Okay. We could discuss that.
I mean, I also kind of want to go back to the wizard stuff, but it seems like, I don't know if that's...
I want to put a pin in that one. I think we've been recording for a while, and I think we probably need to devote some time to that idea.
But we already have talked a bit about the beans.
Yeah.
So this will...
I don't want to devote just 5 minutes to the wizard idea, because I think it deserves more time than that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so the podcast, for those who don't remember or maybe didn't listen to that episode, or you're listening backwards and you haven't gotten to that one yet, the podcast was called Aw Beans, and it was a bean-related podcast where we just talk about different kinds of beans, the beans we like.
Possibly like come up with bean-related puns.
We're rating the beans. We're running out of beans and talking about anything remotely bean-related. We're talking about
Jelly beans.
Francis Bean Cobain, right? Like Mr. Bean.
Mr. Bean.
Yeah. And to be honest, it doesn't seem like it is a real idea, but it has stuck in my brain, and I do keep thinking about it, and like kind of wish that was a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I would listen to it. And I do love the Ah Beans title.
Yeah, Ah Beans.
Ah Beans. Yeah, I think we touched on the importance of being earnest.
Right. We could come up with dumb puns like that. Like, we could have an episode where we come up with the plot for the importance of being earnest.
Yeah, that would be fun.
You know, the importance is, if without him, the beans won't grow. So we need Bean Earnest to come over and help our beans grow. Or whatever. We tried the time-traveling gardener, and that didn't work. So now we've moved on to Bean Earnest. Yeah. Bean Earnest is way more reliable than the time-traveling gardener. We could talk about, or have a taboo about talking about Pythagoras. We could talk about, we would talk about, I say obviously, a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people don't know that Pythagoras, the famed Greek mathematician, came up with the Pythagorean theorem, or supposedly hated beans, really hated beans. Supposedly, there are a number of stories of his death, but one of the stories that could be true is that he was running away from some guys that were trying to murder him. He came to a field of beans. He hated beans so much that he refused to run through the bean field, and the guys caught up to him and killed him. So there's also a good. It's also used as the basis of a good fart joke in Moby Dick.
In
Moby Dick, there's a fart joke about the Pythagorean maxim. Anyway, so Pythagoras is known for his hatred of beans, so we could talk like we hate Pythagoras. We could anytime people talk about triangles, we're not talking about Pythagoras. Right, theorem.
Okay.
I don't care if a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I don't care.
It'd just be an ongoing joke on the podcast that we
we hate him.
We hate Pythagoras because of his
hatred
bean
of beans.
hatred.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. All right, what else? What else?
We could get into stuff like, are we talking about all kinds of legumes? Are peanuts a bean, technically?
Are we really only going to devote one episode to coffee, though? Because coffee beans...
I did say we should only do one episode to coffee. I think the reason I said that was because
it'll become a coffee podcast.
Yeah, if you think about a podcast, if someone told you there's a podcast about beans, you'd be like, what? And then if they said, well, it's actually about coffee, you'd be like, oh, that makes sense. A coffee podcast, right?
Yeah, and we don't want to make sense.
We don't want to get too close to that.
We don't want to make sense.
Yeah. I think we would probably end up talking about coffee for more than one time.
Yeah, okay. But not get into the specifics of coffee beans, the acidity and whatnot.
I don't even drink coffee, so I would have not have much to contribute about that anyway.
Yeah.
We could talk about chocolate as well, but probably should keep that relatively low.
Yeah.
Because the same kind of thing could happen.
Yeah, okay,
but cocoa beans, right? Or whatever.
Right, okay, so quickly, what's your favorite bean?
Favorite bean, Mexican jumping bean, maybe?
Mexican jumping bean.
Because they jump. They're little beans.
Okay.
I think they have a bug in them or something. You're not supposed to eat them.
All right.
That's just off the top of my head. There's probably other beans I like.
Favorite bean that you could eat, though?
I don't know. I mean, one flaw in this idea is that I am relatively neutral on most beans.
Yeah.
But I guess I like a pinto bean, okay. A lima bean is okay, if that's even really a bean.
Yeah. See, I would say black bean.
Black bean's pretty good. I feel like with black beans, I usually like them more than I think I do for some reason.
Yeah.
I'll get black beans on something, like, oh yeah, black beans are pretty good. But then for some reason, I don't think I like them.
Yeah, I spent a long time thinking that I liked pinto beans best, but and weirdly, I like the black beans in the can because you get a little bit of juice.
You like the bean juice.
I like the bean juice.
But not coffee. Actual bean juice.
Actual bean juice. But not a ton of it. You still drain the can, but there's always a little bit left over. And
it's really more like bean slime.
Bean slime. But I like the bean slime.
You like the bean slime.
I like the bean slime. It's really good when you make homemade nachos. Mm-hmm. And you have a little bit of the bean slime on the top.
I am kind of anti-refried beans, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't... I like a regular pinto bean.
Yeah.
Okay, but a refried bean, I'm just not that into it. It's okay. I'll have it on stuff sometimes. If it's on nachos or something, it's not that big of a deal, but I don't really care for it too much.
I like it in burritos.
Yeah.
I feel like it works well in burritos.
Yeah, I would rather have the whole beans,
But
not the mashed up stuff.
But I honestly have a little trouble with refried beans because that's one of those foods that you have to check to make sure it's vegetarian.
Oh, because they might put lard in it.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah. Or they might get it from some kind of bean creature. They might have harvested it from the bean beast.
Right, exactly.
Or Mr. Bean.
Or Mr. Bean.
He lays beans, I think. He's like the Easter Bunny, kind of, but for beans. We could do a whole thing about Mr. Bean, I guess.
Yeah, okay. You've ruined Easter for a few people, I think.
But I've improved Mr. Bean.
Or maybe you've improved Easter immensely.
Maybe, yeah. Mr. Bean as the Easter Bunny
as the Easter Bunny
is an image in my head right now. So
yeah,
you're
laying beans,
like tiny little, just like squatting down, and one little bean comes out.
Oh,
it's terrible.
It's horrible, and it's there forever now.
Yeah, I feel like we would want to devote a whole episode to each different kind of bean.
Yeah,
and the ways they're cultivated, the way they're used. We rate whether we like them or if they're tasty. We would have to make some.
So we'd have to do research.
We'd have to, but it would be, I think we would just like, okay, tonight we're going to have, navy beans. That's a kind of bean, right?
Yeah.
We're going to have navy beans.
I don't think I've ever had navy beans.
I don't know if I have or not. Right? Tonight we're going to have some obscure kind of bean.
I could finally make you try beans on toast.
Beans on toast. Sounds terrible.
It sounds terrible, but it's delicious.
Baked beans. Not a big fan of baked beans, actually.
They're delicious on toast. But that's another one that you do have to specifically get the vegetarian version.
Okay. Do the ones you put on toast, are they like sweet?
They're kind of sweet.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that.
They're kind of sweet, but that's why they work well on the toast, especially if you do like a sourdough toast. Oh, delicious. I want it right now, and I probably can't get it, but
I feel like maybe at the end of, well, I don't know if it's trademarked or something, but I feel like we'd be saying roll that beautiful bean footage a lot. If you're, a younger person, maybe you haven't seen those old commercials where they had a dog talk about beans for Bush's Baked Beans, I believe those commercials were.
I don't know what commercials you're talking about.
That's what that beautiful bean footage is from?
No, I don't.
Oh.
I didn't know that.
We would have to do an episode about that, I guess.
All right. Yeah, I learned something new already.
And I'll show you that commercial. Oh, Rory, it's okay. You don't like talking about beans. You're tired of the bean talk. You're not a big bean head. I definitely think our fans are called bean heads.
Bean heads for sure.
They're big bean heads. They're really into the integrity of our bean conversations. Oh yeah, we also talked about the beans inside of bean bags.
Another good bean pun. The unbearable lightness of bean.
Okay, sure. Real human bean. I'm sure there's lots more.
I'm sure there's lots more bean puns we could come up with. I'll probably wake up in the middle of the night with a good bean pun and shout it at you.
Yeah, you're gonna wake us both up in the middle of the night, screaming like, "Mr. Bean is the Messiah" or something. You're gonna dream. We're both gonna dream about beans tonight, and once we start this podcast, we will dream of beans every night. So
yes.
All right. Well, I think we may have to can the bean talk. For now, because
I see what you did there, and I laughed way too hard at it.
You laughed the appropriate amount, I think. Rory is done with the beans. Rory's over the bean talk, and so we're gonna have to wrap up.
Yeah. So follow us on social media. You can find all the links at our website, which is coolpodcast.website. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at WhatShouldPod. And we also have a Facebook page. And you can email us your thoughts, ideas, questions at coolpodcast.website.
That's right. What@coolpodcast.website is the email address. You can feel free to give us your ideas on you don't have to email them. You can also tell us on Twitter or whatever. We'd love to hear your ideas. Once we start getting more ideas coming in, I'm sure we will feature those on episodes. If you do send us an idea, let us know how you want to be credited for that idea, because we'll mention your name or whatever when we say the idea.
We'll give you a shout out.
Yeah, we'll give you a shout out. But anyway, that's all for today, Beanheads.
It's been fun.
It's been fun. Remember, beans are
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beans are life. Remember that.
And we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
For more bean talk.
More beans. We'll definitely be talking about... We might be talking about beans next week. We might really still be talking about beans. Yeah. All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Bye. What was that podcast about? I'm trying to figure it out. What was that podcast about? Could you perhaps help me out? I just got punched in the mouth. Didn't catch what that was about.